You going back in?
There's still men out there. God damn. When I go home, people ask me, "Hey, Hoot, why do you do it, man? Why? You some kind of war junkie?" I won't say a goddamn word. Why? They won't understand. They won't understand why we do it. They won't understand it's about the men next to you. And that's it. That's all it is.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
I want to make it clear that the views expressed by our hosts are not considered the official stance of MBR Views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
Hello and welcome to Dog Days, where we talk about all things cannabis. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the Bud Bitch. My guest today is Mr. Michael Sylvia, the Director of Sales with Hemp Sage LLC Consulting Services out of Scottsdale, Arizona. His business has over 10 years of experience bringing cannabis brands to market, with experience in everything from supply chain and contract manufacturing to FDA label compliance and marketing. Welcome to the Doghouse, Michael.
Welcome. Thank you. Good to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Are you originally from Scottsdale?
No, I'm originally from Rhode Island, New England. Yeah, the smallest little state in the Union. My professional interests brought me out west. And ultimately it took a few years, but brought me into cannabis, which was my original plan. At the time, I was a business development manager, regional business development manager for an analytical equipment company, manufacturer who was selling more and more instruments, sensors, controllers, all this high-tech stuff into various industries. And one of the industries that was really growing at a tremendous rate at that point was agriculture, more specifically hydroponics, and then more specifically cannabis. So I saw it as an opportunity to see if I could get in the industry by going out there with that company, relocating. I knew they were looking for someone, boots on the ground out in that area. So I volunteered to relocate and try my hand somewhere else. And they had originally wanted me to go to California, which would have been ideal, but they weren't quite willing to pay me what would have been required for me to justify going to California. So I convinced them to let me go to Arizona and just kind of take some quick trips over there pretty routinely. In fact, I was traveling there every week for a few years, once a week for 2 or 3 days a week for a few years. So it's kind of Southern California was a second home for a little while. So I was out in that area for about 10 years. And just recently moved back to New England, where I'm from originally.
Oh, is that where you're calling from now, is New England?
Yes.
Oh, here, I'm thinking you're on my time zone and everything.
Okay,
That's why we were kind of, okay. I got it now. Cool. So how has it been treating you in Rhode Island? Are folks receptive to the cannabis and cannabis industry out there?
Yep, we have recreational here, and we've had med for a while. It's it's several years behind the West Coast, but I don't remember exactly when recreational became a thing here, but it was probably at least 4 to 6 years ago. But yeah, it's pretty much normalized here at this point. So it's not as big of a market here as you would expect as obviously the West Coast, but all the same, it's a cool industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was hoping I could get up a website or two of your operation, and kind of talk about what you got going on. Are we able to get his website up? Yeah, look at that machinery there. Is that your custom built pharmaceutical grade isomerization reactor?
Yeah, it's a mouthful, isn't it? So yeah, there's a facility that I am a part of and affiliated with, and this is located in Phoenix, Arizona. That does all manner of extraction, purification, conversion into different isomers and things like that. It's sort of a really interesting, how fast and how fast the industry adapts and how innovative it is. And I've been sort of in the background, again on the supply side, very close to farms, but even closer to these types of facilities, these types of operations, extraction facilities. And post-processing facilities, things like that. So I've really come to understand how these things go from the fields and these grow rooms to products on the shelf.
Oh, that's interesting that you were talking about fields. How much of the cannabis products that are out there in the market actually come from fields? Because I would think that most of it would come from grow rooms.
On the West Coast, it's still a thing for sure. It's not as popular as it was when I first, got into the space back in 2013, 2014. So it's not quite as popular as it once was. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's very difficult to beat nature, especially when it comes to cost, carbon footprint, various things like that. So there is absolutely still, outdoor grows, in particular in the Pacific Northwest is still quite popular there.
Awesome.
But as soon as you kind of get out of the West Coast, it's a lot more rare. Most everything is more indoor, heavily secured, obscure buildings that, and unless you're driving by with the window down, you would never know it's what's going on in the building. So.
Right, exactly. So you're working with startup companies. If we, I don't want to jump the gun too quickly in our conversation, but the whole rescheduling of the cannabis is really going to change the business outlook, the structure of it, and everything. There's going to be some folks who are going to want to hop on I hate to say it, the gravy train. Once things do kind of settle down and things are whatever shakes out from the reclassification process.
Yeah,
So are people already starting to contact you? Because I heard that once the news hit the waves, there were like 70 banks already who are there. Like, we want to work with cannabis companies and in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, these are great questions, and I wish I could tell you I had definitive answers to them all. What I can tell you is some of what I experienced on the hemp side of the industry. And it doesn't go, well, it didn't with that go according to plan, or at least, the way many, many experts expected it would. When the 2018 Farm Bill passed and reclassified hemp, and took it off of the controlled substance, one of the main purported benefits of that was that it would allow, now that it's clearly defined, no longer defined as a controlled substance, it would allow for the banking industry, to properly service that industry. And, here we are 6 years later, and there's still issues with the banking industry servicing that industry. In fact, I ironically had my own bank account where I signed an affidavit for hemp sage, essentially declaring that I actually don't physically house or touch any of this controlled substances, even on the hemp side, right? And I had an account for a couple of years, and it wasn't until after the farm bill passed that my bank called me and was like, "We have to close your account." And I was quite frustrated with the experience because I was like, "That's not what was supposed to happen." So the rumors right now is that it's probably going to get, marijuana will probably get reclassified to Schedule 3. It is a move in the right direction. Should theoretically allow for better, research, access to banking and capital and things like that will really help propel the industry forward. It's not really where I think it belongs, but getting the government to admit when they're wrong is super difficult, and it's probably going to happen in small incremental baby steps. So I guess you got to take the wins even when they're small.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that. The fight is not over at all. Of course, we all want to see it declassified, completely off any kind of registry, and let the free market take its way, and it'll work itself out. But we got to take these small wins when we can, right?
Yeah. It's funny you talk about the fight's definitely not over. This is going back several years ago, but I remember a few people just over the, at different events commenting how fast this is happening. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Right.
I think was it Prop 250? I can't remember. Was it Prop 201, the original proposition that passed for compassionate care use in California in like 1994?
Right.
2024. That's 30 years. This is slow. A lot of people like to compare cannabis prohibition with alcohol prohibition, rightfully so. And alcohol prohibition, that whole experiment lasted like 6 or 7 years. That whole failed experiment didn't last very long. So comparatively speaking, this is not going fast at all. It's very slow. And like you said, you have to kind of just celebrate when you get the little victories, because it's David versus Goliath right now.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. And here in Wyoming, there's absolutely nothing legal. This last go around in legislation, they actually banned the synthetics from us. So we have absolutely nothing. We have industrial hemp, and I am a hemp farmer because I want to be in the industry. And as soon as, it opens up for other things, I want to expand into other areas of the industry. But hemp is the only thing that is legal right now. And, it's the prohibitionists here. It's crazy. They were right in front of the TV screens. They were, right there in the newspapers saying, nothing's going to change here in Wyoming.
Yeah. Did Wyoming lean on sort of the federal definitions of synthetic? Because the DEA came out, I think it was like 2019. They came out and just put a memo out in the Federal Register that the converted biosynthetic isomers that were coming from hemp CBD and being converted into things like Delta 8 or Delta 10 or what have you, those are not synthetic by the federal definition. They're biosynthetic. They start from organic biomaterial, and then they use a catalyst and a chemical reaction to sort of reverse the process of how these molecules would form on the plant back towards these other isomers. And
no, it's totally archaic and ignorant legislation, and it just came out. And so it's supposed to take hold 1 July, and we already have business people who are on the bandwagon to take them to court and sue the state. So more to follow.
That has to happen. It's happening all over. It's happening in Alabama and a few other places that I'm familiar with, and that is kind of the only language these folks speak. And what's more frustrating about it is it seems like it's never ending, because they don't really know what they're trying to form rules around and legislate. They don't really understand the science. These are not these are politicians. Most of them are career politicians. They're not scientists. They're not farmers. They're not any of this stuff. And so they don't understand. And so they kind of try to create this framework. And then our entrepreneurs very quickly find ways around that framework. And then we're right back in there 2 to 4 years later, changing it again and changing it again and changing it again. When in reality, everything is heading in the direction ultimately of it just being more of a legalized or even hopefully decriminalized natural plant that people can access. I think that is the inevitable outcome. I don't know how long it's going to take us to get there. It seems like it's going to be a little while, and that has to do, I think, in my personal opinion, a lot with the influence of big pharma, on government. So on government.
I totally agree with you, Michael, on that. We're having an awesome discussion. I'm going to take a really quick break, and we'll pick up there with. I still want to know more about your company, so hang tight. We'll be right back. And we are back. We are talking with Mr. Michael, and he is going to tell us more about his business. So do you take budding businesses, and I say that with tongue in cheek with the budding businesses anyways, they come to you and you do seed to sale. Is that what you do? Or can you walk me through your process?
So, I have a pretty unique background, which has afforded me this opportunity, but it's a very strong combination of the sort of chemistry side of this or technical side of this, the entrepreneurial side of this, and the sort of the third party manufacturing, the third party lab verification. And so I always have taken roles or jobs with one of two things in mind. Most people take jobs because of benefits or salary or something like that. I've always taken jobs because they either there was a clear mentor there that I believed I could learn a lot from, or there was clear skills or experience there that I wanted to sort of absorb and add to my repertoire. And so, my professional experience is largely in sales and entrepreneurship, but it's also around very technical things, and manufacturing, going to market, distribution, and regulations. It's always been in regulated industries as well. So essentially, people come to me, and you can kind of tell from what I have listed on LinkedIn and Alignable that they come to me looking for one of a few different things. They're either looking for supply chain support, they need raw materials to to make products with, or perhaps they need a contract manufacturer to make particular products for them, beverages, gummies, whatever it may be, soft gels, personal care products, etc. Perhaps they need verified or certified organic raw materials or GMP laboratories. Because of what I've been doing, I have a whole network of relationships with exactly these types of operations. And so whether it's just one piece of that or every piece of that throughout the whole process of creating a brand and I can generally help almost anybody. So, or at least in this category. So that's kind of what I offer is that. And again, I'm not an attorney or anything like that, but having done this now for 11 years and having worked closely with FDA attorneys, I can even provide sort of like preliminary, again, it's probably not going to save you in court, but it'll probably protect you from 95% of your liability, but at least give you a good idea of whether or not you're saying the right things on your labels. That's something that the FDA has been repeatedly and routinely cracking down on, is making certain claims without any justification of those claims, and things like that. So just having this combination of experience is pretty unique, and it's afforded me this opportunity to provide these services and basically let people tap into me for whatever it is they need in that moment.
Oh, fantastic! So you're kind of a jack of all trades.
Always
and
have.
you've been through the school of hard knocks, so you know where all the landmines are. So
Correct.
that's half the battle, buddy.
Yes, that's actually an excellent point. Is when you get into this space, and it's not quite as bad as it is today, or it's not quite as bad today as it was 10 years ago. But when this is an industry that wasn't an industry not that long
Mhm.
ago, and everybody who had any experience in the industry was essentially black market and not the most professional people. Some of those people have actually survived to go on to be pretty prominent and have pretty prominent careers in this industry, but the vast majority, their true colors shone through, and they didn't survive, and nor should they. So
Yeah.
for me to have this experience that I have, to have been to so many of these farms, these sites, these grow facilities, the extraction facilities, these manufacturing sites, to have kind of done these audits, in all these scenarios, and to be able to kind of skip a lot of that. There's a lot of cost, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of investment there. I'm not saying you necessarily can skip all of it, but you can skip large chunks of it if you work with me.
Got it. That's awesome. I love that. Kind of like a guiding light and a lighthouse in the storm. And Michael will be able to help your budding business navigate those waters. So moving on to, let's see what else. Oh, so you work with farmers. So they're in Rhode Island. You're working with farmers.
I work with people all over the world, to be honest with
Okay.
you. Right now, I'm working on an interesting, and I'm only going to say a little bit about it, but it's an interesting AI opportunity with a cultivation site that is both indoor and outdoor farming, and that's in Thailand. So there's tons of opportunities, and again, that's one of the things that, just having been in this space, my Rolodex is probably worth several $1,000,000 just because of the connections I've been able to build over years. Going to shows, going to different events. This industry has brought me to London. It's brought me to Mexico. It's brought me all over this country. So there's a lot of connections in there that have value, and I've just tapped into them as different things have come up that seem to make sense to connect people. That's what I
Love
enjoy
it.
doing. I enjoy connecting people for mutual benefit.
Because I have talked to people in the industry, and they're kind of fed up with going to the conferences. It's the same kind of dog and pony show, and the cost of travel, the conference fees, the hotels, the food that you have to buy.
Yeah.
They're kind of fed up with the conference scene. You kind of feel the same way?
I do. Actually, I missed the very first one, very first Marijuana Business Expo at the Rio in Las Vegas. But from the second year all the way through like the 10th or 11th year, I went every year. But when the pandemic came, a lot of things kind of had to make some decisions. So I haven't really been since then. But it was that's exactly what my experience was. I did a lot of shows in this industry for the networking opportunity and to just meet people, different things like that, learn what was happening, who was coming out with what. And it did start to get a little bit, monotonous. There was a lot of the same stuff at the same place, and you see the same people, which is fun. You get to know these people. They're cool people in this industry, as I'm sure I don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
But is it really worth the value anymore? And I think
Yeah.
that's where a lot of people are at. I still think the Marijuana Business Expo is absolutely worth attending if you've never attended and you're interested in this industry and becoming an entrepreneur in this industry. But yeah, I would say, if you've been to a couple, you probably don't need to go every year, maybe just every other year, every third year, just to see what's new.
And so I came across you on Alignable. And when Alignable first came out, I kind of looked at it as like, meh. And so I kind of revisited it again once I graduated from grad school. And I'm really starting to look into launching my business now. And I'm kind of surprised at the quality of Alignable. How is it working out for you?
Alignable is, I would say, a nice complement to LinkedIn. And nothing ever really replaces the face-to-face connections. Again, part of the reason why I don't go to as many trade shows is because I went to so many for so long. And I'm very grateful that I did, because I still talk to all those people, most of those people anyways, pretty fairly routinely. And some of these connections I know I'm going to have for the rest of my life. That being said, you got to have a presence somewhere. You have to have listings somewhere if you want to be found. I think for what I do, Alignable and LinkedIn is really all I need. I've worked pretty much my whole career on referrals, or getting a few leads at a show by walking the show or even having a booth at a show. And I've never really needed to do much more than that. It's kept me quite busy. But yeah, Alignable kind of felt the same way about it when I first came across it. It's like, I'm already on LinkedIn. I don't know, but I threw something up there and I've made some good connections there. It's hit or miss. You're going to make a lot of connections and not all of them going to amount to much, but some of them will turn into some really good opportunities for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a actual cannabis group that meets like once a month or something. And I went to the first meeting last month. Really interesting people in that group. Some people from Canada too were in that group. I guess they get Alignable up there in Canada, but it's very regulated to the cannabis industry. And if you're a producer or vendor, very regulated in what you can and cannot do as far as, I guess, advertising your product or your merchandise. And they're just craving to come down here to the United States and kind of make connections and bring their businesses down here to the US, because it is so regulated up there in Canada. And I had no idea. I mean, they're right across the border, and I had no idea that was going on.
Yeah, Canada is definitely a little bit of a different beast. It's in some ways better, in a lot of ways worse. They really control what's produced there, which is not really the case here. And because they control how much is produced there are shortages all the time. And for a little while, there was a way that seemed to be, I'm not sure if it was legal, but it seemed to be okay. We tried to go through the the appropriate channels, and nobody stopped us, and nobody, the few questions they had, we answered, and we continued to do our thing for quite a while, when that first had occurred. And then all of a sudden, again, the regulations kicked in, and they didn't want anything coming in, which was frustrating for a lot of people up there, because they weren't able to make enough to satisfy all the patients and all the consumers they had. And it was frustrating for us because we lost a distribution channel, so it is difficult sometimes to watch these people who frankly don't really produce much. If anything, they just produce laws that sometimes work and most of the time don't. And they get in the way of people who are voluntarily just trying to, help each other out. And sure, yeah, there's profit involved and so forth, but it's crazy. It's head scratching at times,
Yeah. The one chick, she was doing wine that was infused with cannabis. That sounds delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And another young lady was actually was cooking with cannabis, and kind of had a Jamaican flair to her food. And that stuff just sounds like fun, and we need to bring their businesses down here to the US.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff, especially places like Denver that have been, online with adult use for a long time now, for probably over a decade. There's a lot of that type of stuff, cannabis themed restaurants. There was always the wine and paint things. Now there is puff pass and paint, and things like that. And it's fun. It's different. It's a different experience. And clearly the consumers, want stuff like that. I don't know why some places don't allow it and others do, but it's, to me, it's fighting the inevitable. I don't know why we would ever try to fight the inevitable or fight nature,
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. Hey, we take a break every 15, so I'm coming up on my 30-minute, and we'll be right back. Let's continue our chat.
Sounds good.
It's the guts and it's the glory. 100 stripes, 100 stories. It's the Pledge of Allegiance on the 4th of July. It's them handwritten letters from home. It's them sleepless nights alone. It's his newborn baby he left with his wife. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, hear the light. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Hey. From the fields of Indiana to the swamps of Louisiana, to the golden coast of California, Uncle Sam's the only family he's got. His purple heartbeat won't stop, and his 18th birthday was the day he was born. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, hear the light. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, stand on the front line.
And we're back, continuing our conversation with Mr. Michael. And he is a consultant, a cannabis consultant. So you can help out anyone from basically seed to sale, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Again, anybody who is doesn't know where to start or has breakdowns in their supply chain, whether they don't have the right manufacturing partner, they're not sure where to get what tests they need on their products, or where to get them tested, or again the raw materials that they might need. That's where I can step in.
That's awesome. So I'm just going to throw something out there, hypothetically, but pretty soon here. I may have 2 greenhouses, and I'm into CBG. So if I start throwing my seeds in and growing these luscious little buds, the next step would be extraction. So I could give you a call, Michael, and say, hey, I'm here in Wyoming. Where's my closest extraction point?
Yeah, yeah. Again, it would be something similar to that. I'm not sure if I would always have the closest one to you, but we could certainly find people that would take your your biomass in and extract it or purify it into something that would be more formulation ready.
Awesome. You could hook me up with that wonderful contraption, the isomer.
I can certainly try it. It's a commodities market. It ebbs and flows. There's supply and demand. There's it's seasonal. It's everybody's selling at the same time, right? When everybody is harvested. So it's funny because there is a premium when the seeds are going in the ground, but by the time you've harvested, everybody's got their futures, everybody's got their contracts signed, and you just can't get the same price that you could have 3 or 4 months earlier. But you can't. It's the way it works. It's frustrating, but the right relationships can become more predictable and therefore a little bit more profitable.
Exactly. So at least you could help me break down the door and make and establish a network for my biomass if and when that time comes.
Exactly.
Very cool. So like at that point, if you have biomass, then they take it to the laboratory, they test it, they generate the COA, the certificate of analysis there, I'm assuming, and then they pass it on to whoever wants to bottle it, correct?
Yeah, they'll usually do the bottling. They'll bottle it up usually at the time that they extract it, right? While it's still hot and moving and flowing. There's different levels. So to answer your question, as the biomass comes in, you're typically doing some level of CO2 or ethanol extraction. That's going to give you a crude-like product that's still going to have chlorophyll. It's not going to have like physical plant matter, but it will still have all the other parts of the plant. It'll still have the chlorophyll, so it'll be really dark green, almost looks black, like oil. Very thick. And then from there, sometimes there's demand for that material, but a lot of times it needs to be processed further. Pull out it's called winterize. You start to pull out the plant fats and waxes. You pull out the chlorophyll, and it starts to look more pure. At that point, you'd run it through distillation, and now you have a distillate. And then the final step is isolation. If you want to go to a pure white, like 98% pure CBG powder. That could be like, again, that's like formulation ready for like compound pharmacists or veterinarians or anybody who might be making product like that. So that's the process, but it's typically filled right after extraction. As far as testing, a lot of extractors will have their own HPLC on site, so you can get sort of unofficial internal results. But it's always recommended. And again, as far as buying and selling is concerned in these markets, they're always going to want to see some sort of ISO 17025 accredited laboratory results, some third party that isn't going to manipulate or Photoshop the results or anything like that. So, that's typically how that's done.
Yeah, so laboratories can either be DEA certified or not. What kind of difference does that make? Or have you seen that criteria is actually a game changer or not?
No, it just has to do with what they can handle. So and this is very nuanced, and I'm happy to kind of get into it, but it's nuanced. So the main thing is ISO 17025. That's what most people are going to want to see. Most manufacturers are going to want to see that. And that's because that is a regulated type of lab that, they're required to keep records. They're required to keep samples on retain for a number of years. They're basically obligated to make sure they never forge any documents or anything like that. And again, they're an independent third party. They're not really invested in the transaction. So that's one of the most important aspects of them. As far as DEA license and non-DEA license, if it's clearly marijuana biomass, then you can only work with a DEA license. But a lot of ISO 17025 are DEA licensed, especially these days. And obviously, if it's hemp, even if it has D9 in it, if it's from hemp, you can still send it to a non-DEA licensed laboratory facility. So there's a little bit more nuance in there than that, but we could spend days talking about that.
And then it doesn't matter because it's basically the DEA saying that it's not going to be federally regulated here soon. So, but there's a long way to go until that happens. That's not entirely, and so we kind of gotta let people know it's.
If it moves to, you still need a DEA license for Schedule 3, to be clear.
Okay.
So
you do.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's interesting.
Yeah, you would still need. It's as long as it's on the schedule. It's under
anywhere.
Yeah,
anywhere.
So now, some of those things, because if you think about like alcohol and tobacco, you do have a drug enforcement agency license to distribute liquor or whatever, or just warehouse liquor or whatever, right? So it gets less and less strict. There's less and less red tape, less and less hoops to jump through, less and less costs associated with abiding by the regulations. But it's still all licensed. It's still all controlled, right?
Crazy.
Yes. We got to control a plant that grows naturally.
Oh my goodness. So it's not going to happen. This whole rescheduling thing.
I think it probably will happen, but I just, the expectations should be muted. A lot of people make a lot of assumptions all the time about this sort of stuff. They get excited, even just hearing the words legalization. That doesn't really excite me that much. It certainly is better than putting people in prison, busting down doors, shooting dogs, whatever, and putting people in. It is a step in the right direction. But at the end of the day, legalization really means corporatization, heavy taxes, heavy regulations. And I think that anything that grows in nature, you should just be able to grow it in your backyard or your house. And it doesn't need to be taxed. Nobody taxes my tomato garden. At least not yet.
You're awesome, Michael. I love it.
Before I give them some ideas here, but it doesn't need to be taxed. But that was one of that was sort of the concession that we as an industry made was, hey, if you legalize this versus decriminalize it, which is what it was up until 1972 or 71 or whatever the Controlled Substances Act was signed. You can look at all this projected tax revenue. And of course, that was what really moved the needle. Was people, look at all that. We can do all sorts of stuff with that, so that's what moved the needle. But
and businesses have taken a hit. I know California overregulated, overtaxed, and the bubble, from what I'm hearing, talking to people, is that the bubble has burst in California. And
I don't even think it's just California. As a whole, the pandemic it came at the worst possible time. The industry was already in the process of sort of contracting a little bit. With any new industry, it's going to expand and contract based on, especially heavily regulated industries. Whenever a new market comes into play because of regulations, it expands a little bit, and then usually supply exceeds demand, and then it contracts a little bit, and so forth. And so with the timing of when the pandemic hit, and especially the states that locked down, and just the dip in the economy that occurred, the loss of income from most people that they experience, especially small business owners, people who own shops and stuff like that, sort of huge hits. And so a lot of that sort of disposable income was gone. It wasn't coming in anymore. And so you had to worry about your essentials, which means you had to give up on some of this other stuff. So it was not a good thing for the industry. And like I said, the timing of it was the industry was already kind of on the ropes a little bit. I think the good news is long term, this industry has not come anywhere near to its full potential yet. It is still heavily suppressed. Again, I alluded to it earlier, but by big pharma and the amount of financial influence and political influence that big pharma has. I've been saying this, kind of preaching this, if you will, for a while now, but I personally believe this plant and the products that we can make from it can replace 80 to 90% of your medicine cabinet. And so who's that going to affect? So you always have to look at, they say follow the science, but I think what they really mean is follow the money. If you follow the money, you see why all of a sudden the motivations become very clear. So the even the FDA's stance, I'm not sure if you're aware of the hemp side as much. I know you do it a little bit, but the FDA's ongoing stance is that we can't put hemp CBD or any cannabinoids from hemp into products like food and beverages and stuff like that. We can't put it into the quote unquote food supply. And their justification for that is that there's no evidence that it's ever been in the food supply. And anybody who's studied this kind of raises their eyebrows at that, because
all the time.
There's a couple of things that maybe I'm not an attorney, maybe you could label them as circumstantial, but there's a lot of circumstances, right? So, we know that animals, domestic animals and wild animals, well, I should start all the way back. We know that feral hemp grew all over this country for a long, long time. We used to call it Indian. You used to be able to pay your taxes in hemp. During World War II, hemp was temporarily, or cannabis was temporarily decriminalized, and farms were required to grow hemp because we needed to grow it for the ropes for the ships, warships, and everything. The Declaration of Independence was written on cannabis paper. Like the word canvas is a derivative of cannabis, so any canvas sale, any canvas painting, all of that was something that was a part of our lives for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. And we know that because it's everywhere, because it's a weed that grows everywhere, animals fed on this. So whether a wild deer that we hunted, wild boar, domesticated farm animals that were probably feeding on this stuff growing in the corner of the farm,
they loved it.
And then we consume the products, right? The eggs, the milk, the cheese, the beef, the whatever. There's just no real possible chance this wasn't in the food supply, at least indirectly. And now we know about the endogenous cannabinoid system, and we've known about this for quite a while too, at least 30 years. So we have almost every major system in the body, the nervous system, the digestive system, the reproductive system, the integumentary system, the skeletal system. Almost every system in the body has these receptors for cannabinoids, or at least endogenous cannabinoids, endocannabinoids, one of which is anandamide. Ananda is the Sanskrit word for bliss, so it's literally called a bliss molecule. And that is the analog. That's the molecule that your own body makes that mimics the effect that THC has on your body. And everybody has experienced this. Everybody. We've all heard of runner's high. We've all seen infants who have just suckled on nursed on mom, who are looking over there like, oh, because this anandamide passes, it's naturally formed in the mother's body and passes through the breast milk.
Exactly.
What's this calming effect on the babies?
So
we know that. And there's another one called 2AG, which is essentially the almost identical molecule to CBD. And there are probably others that we are still discovering. But the bottom line is our bodies, we clearly co-evolved with this plant. We clearly we're making molecules that are almost identical to this. And these molecules clearly serve a purpose. In fact, they probably serve a very important purpose, because the receptors for these molecules are in almost every major system we have.
Yeah.
So that actually kind of implies that the endogenous cannabinoid system is kind of like the master system that regulates
Yes.
and helps all the systems communicate to each other. I actually heard a neurologist describe it this way when I was at a show. He said it's kind of like an orchestra. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You have your different instrumentation sections. So you have your percussion, your wind, your brass, okay, etc. And then you have your conductor. Okay. So each of those sections is kind of like a system: your nervous system, your integumentary system, your reproductive system, digestive system. They can all function, right? They can all still read the music, which is the DNA. They can all still perform and do what their functions are, which is the cellular functions of each system. But if the conductor is out sick, they may fall out of rhythm a little bit. They may lose harmony between each section a little bit. And he said that's what this endogenous system appears to do, is create harmony between the different systems. Just like a conductor keeps all these different instrumentation sections, on the same beat, on the same rhythm, and in harmony with each other.
That's perfectly said. You nailed it right on the head. We're running out of time. Unfortunately, I've enjoyed my time talking to you. You're welcome to come on the show whenever you want to, Michael, if you have something new to share with folks. It's been great. Thank you so much for coming on. And would you like to tell the folks how to get a hold of you or pass on any other information before we leave?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my email is just hempsagellc@gmail.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn using hempsage, or Alignable using hempsage. So I'm happy to assist anybody any way that I can. So
awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Until next time.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's the show for today, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And remember, you can listen to us again and again. The podcast of this radio show is available right after we go off the air tonight, anywhere that you can get your podcast episodes. And thanks for joining us today. I'd like to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart. Military Broadcast Radio is doing incredible work to support our veterans and bring their voices to the world. They rely on your generous donations and your dedicated volunteer hours to make it happen. I encourage you to consider supporting NBR in any way, form that you can. Use this QR code that's attached to the picture, or you can go to our website at mbradio.us. That's MikeBravoRadio.us to learn more about how you can donate or volunteer even just an hour a week from your home. Help make a difference in the lives of our veterans, because once again, we're all here for you and not for us. We're giving our veterans a voice.